and we'll get started in about 1 minute with the presentation for today. Thank you. Well, hello again. My name is Todd Covert, Executive Vice President for ACA Track. Uh, Today we're going to go over some general system features that will be rolling out in phase one of our rollout. And hopefully by now you've all had a chance to receive your system login and registration generated by our system. If for some reason you haven't received a login and registration, please contact your project manager, and it's a possibility that your IT architecture may have blocked our incoming email. We can send you directly to our system with a verification code if you have not received your login and registration. But as of now, all of those have been sent out. So the goal of today is to really go over three main components of the system. The first one is adding additional users into the system. So what I've done here is I have clicked on the Company and Management tab right here, the red tab. And under the Company and Division tab, there is an option to create client users or additional users. What I would do is if I wanted to add additional users, come over here, click Add Users, and I can either add one of my staff members as a client admin or a client user. The only difference between these two functions in our system is a client admin has the ability to add additional users, where a client user does not have the ability to add additional users. The next function that we really want to go over is our data upload process. Also, you've received an email notification with our data upload user guide, which is a walkthrough instruction manual of how to upload data and how to review and read the various error reports that we have. So over here under the Data Management tab, I would simply come to the data upload screen. I would create a new batch, and this is for groups that have not uploaded any new data for the month or would be adding data for the very first time. What we don't want to do is upload and create a new batch if there is a correction to the file that we've already uploaded. If we want to send in a correction, we want to come to the Resume button, which is this icon right here, and that is how we upload a corrected batch. So if you upload a file that has 100 employees on it and two of the employees came back with errors on it, we would want to hit the Resume button here and not the New Batch. The new batch would only be used if there are additional months of data, or at the end of the year you're uploading your final file and new data is being uploaded into the system. So after I've uploaded the data, back up here, sorry. So if I'm uploading data for the first time, I can create a batch name like test 1, test 3, and all we're doing here, and I select, am I inspecting the employee data or the dependent data? So let's say I'm going to inspect the employee data. The data is through September, and this is just an inspection batch. So what we're doing here is just testing your files. If there's errors that come back, it's not the end of the world. We're just trying to go through a testing process here in October and November. So when January comes, we have a very short turnaround time to have all of the files cleaned up and corrected. And that's really what we're doing here in October and November is testing our files. So when January 6th happens and we've got to upload our final files, there's not many corrections that need to take place. I would select the employee template for 2016. I also have the ability to upload files by division, or I can simply say all. And then I would find my file in my system, ABC company, and then from there I would upload. From here, it's going to give you a pretty much within 1 to 2 minutes, it's going to give you a report does your file have all of the general attributes in all the columns and the data elements that are needed. It's a very short, what we call inspection of the file. It has to pass this process to get into what we call the validation process. The validation process is here, and the validation reports are here with a red icon. If your file is clean through inspection and validation, it will go right into the integrity step of the process. So if you've had a clean file through inspection as well as validation, it will go right into the integrity section. So let's go back to the validation portion of the data testing. So I've uploaded a file, and what I want to do is review. It looks like I have some failures around the overall validation of this file. What I would do is I would click on the red validation report, and it would pull up an itemized audit report of how many failed employees I had, how many successful employees. So this report, as you can see here, had 12 employees successfully uploaded, 4 employee records had failed, and over here is a little bit more of a detailed summary of where the errors did occur. I would further drill down into this in the second tab where it says validation detail report. So we have the summary, we have a detailed report where the software, usually within 4 to 7 minutes, is going to give you an itemized report of where the row or where the rejected row happened within the data upload and what the issue was within the file. So within about 4 to 7 minutes, you should be getting back a validation report saying, hey, it's passed or it has not passed. So for example, some of the errors in this data upload, we can see we're on row 10, row 12, row 18, and 19. The error over here was an unidentified division code, an unidentified plan ID, and then also over here it has looks like there was some blank fields in the data. So it would show us on row 18, 19, and 21 here. Looks like some cells had some blank data in it or blank fields. So the system is obviously rejecting this. We've spent a significant investment in automating all of the data formatting and auditing, really down to the initial inspection and validation within about 10 minutes. If the data doesn't get in the right format and is not properly audited, those serious codes that are generated on the 1095 will never be correct, and that's where we open up ourselves to penalties and fines. So as much as we are an ACA compliance reporting solution, we've really become a company that's invested significantly in data analytics and data auditing through automation. So we have a brief summary here. We've also have a report here or a tab where it's just the records with issues. So as we mentioned over here, just for example, on row 10 and 12, we had some errors. These were mapping errors where maybe when we set up the account last year, you only had one plan and you only had one division. this report here is showing you've provided a division code on row 10. So we'll have row 10 here. It's saying that we don't identify anything with plan 2 or anything with a division code ending in 80. Maybe you've added a division, maybe you've added a plan for 2016. So the system is kicking out saying, hey, you never told us about this division that ended in 80. We never knew anything about this plan 2. So that needs to be corrected over on the mapping screen that we'll go over at the very end. Conversely, we see in row 18, 19, and 21, there is some blank fields. So let's come over here to the rejected rows in row 18, 19, and 21, which are these rows right here. And we have some errors in, we see there is no plan ID here in this record. There is no, I think there was another error over here on SSNs. So right here, there was no SSN records on this. So the software is automating this audit and identifying, hey, you forgot to give us a SSN on people in row 18 and row 21. We don't have a plan ID associated with a person in row 19. So again, this is the validation portion of the audit and the CDM services. Once we make those corrections to that file, again, it's very important that we hit the resume button here. We do not want to add a new batch if we're correcting a file. So once we hit the resume, it's going to go into the integrity, and the integrity is going to give us our last and final phase of the audit review. The integrity phase is where we're going line by line through every single employee record and looking for gaps in the data or conflicting time periods in the data. So this employee had, this upload had 13 successful records uploaded and 2 failed employee records that were uploaded. It gives us a little bit more summary over here to the right. It was some issues around coverage type. On the second tab, it gives us a little bit more detailed on what row it was. It looks like it was on row 13, 14, 21, and 22, and these were the issues with those rows. So the rejected row or the rejected record gives us an itemized breakout of all of the errors. And over here we can see we had issues around the coverage type or the coverage begin and end date. If I look at this a little further, it's going to show me that I have overlapping time periods. This is the same individual here on row 7 and 8. Okay, highlight this a little bit. It's showing us that we had the same employee here that had wave coverage starting on 4/1, but it also is showing that they were insured through 4/30 of 2016. So this is obviously impossible. You can't have a waiver time period and insured in the same time period, because as you can see here, again, this is the same individual. It just has 2 records. It's showing that he waived coverage starting on 4/1, but the record before shows that he was insured through 4/30 of 2016. So this is just the depth of the analysis that we're going in to make sure that the data gets in the right format and in the right tables to correctly produce the 1095-C. This would be a possible penalty if we reported somebody that had waived coverage in 1 month when they were actually insured. And then also right down here, there's another record of an employee that has 2 rows. Here I'll highlight in light green. And the issue is around Cobra elected and Cobra waived. You can see here that they were Cobra elected until 4/16. Make this a little bit bigger for y'all. They were elected Cobra until 4/16. However, in the other record, it shows that they had waived Cobra on 4/1. So obviously, this is impossible for an employee to have waived Cobra and elected Cobra during the same time period, which would obviously uh, cause us to incorrectly code a 1095C. Some other things that we do is we're looking at the hire date compared to when the coverage began. So maybe there was a manual input error when the coverage begin date was before somebody's date of hire. We go through about 50 additional audits on all of these data elements to ensure, to the best of our ability, the data gets in the proper format. So, again, we have our summary page here. We have our detailed report that shows the row and the issue with the error, and then a rejected um, tab with just the employees or the employee records that caused the error. So what I can do is, instead of re-uploading a full new file and having to sift through an employee file of 200 or 300, what we have done this year is just broken out the employees that have an issue, and you can re-upload just those employee records. So you can see here that we attempted to upload 15 records. The system has accepted 13 records. So now all we're dealing with is 2 employee records that have failures, and we can just clean those 2 employee records up for the month that we're testing, and we're good to go. We don't have to re-upload and manage a whole new file when the system has already accepted the 13 individuals that had a clean record. So that is a little bit about our data upload process. A few of the other icons on this page, the green Excel icon is your original data that was uploaded. So if you ever want to go back and then see, what did my file look like when I originally uploaded it, you can download that file right here in the green Excel icon. Again, if I want to delete a row or delete a batch, I can simply hit the delete batch function, and that will go into a subcategory of deleted files. And then the resume button. Again, this is very important when we're doing corrected files or resubmitting employees that have errored out. We want to hit the resume button and go to this stage, and it will allow us to upload just the employee records that had an error. We don't want to start a new batch because that will start it from the beginning, and you'll end up having records out here that were never fixed. Not the end of the world, but we just want to try to keep this process as clean as possible for the various months that we're doing the testing. I'm going to move back over here. As I mentioned before, we do something called mapping. And again, if you have any questions on this, please reach out to your project manager. What we've done at ACA Track is something that is called data mapping, where we can take your language that is in your data files and map it over to the language needed for IRS reporting. So it will reduce some of the formatting and manipulating that you have to do with your data. For example, I mentioned earlier that there was some division codes that entered in 80. Well, when we set up the account, when we had received this employer's company's plans and division form, there was nothing that was referencing a division code that ended in 80. It was probably a new division that they added in 2016. So in that situation, I would simply come here and I would add the new division code by typing it in. For short purposes, say it was 80. You can see here now I've added a division code that ends in 80. Let's say this year you've changed your variable hour employee data language from variable hour to VH. So I would come in here and say my new code for a variable hour employee is VH, and that gets mapped to a variable hour employee. Or let's say over here, my new language for being insured is elected. What I can do is edit here and change elected, which is my status code, for insured, which is required by the IRS. I would hit save, and now the system would recognize when the data comes in and it says elected, that means insured, or vice versa. If Cobra elected in your data is CE, we need to translate that into Cobra elected. So this is how we're, again, mapping your data language into the language that is needed for the IRS. If something shows up in your data file that doesn't line up here in the mapping, it's going to show up on an error report, and that's how we go through the correction process. So it's a pretty sophisticated process to make sure that the data gets optimized and put in the right tables to in turn generate the correct 1095C. So that is a short tutorial for today. If any of you have any questions, we have a chat feature up at the very top. You can also reach out to your project manager on any questions via Basecamp, but I will turn it back over to, and then we can do another test run in November, and then the final file is due the first week of January for the forms to be delivered by January 30th. Well, there doesn't look like there's any additional questions. Again, I thank you for joining us, and we look forward to working with you for the 2016 reporting period. Thank you so much.